And now we're going to get a chance to talk about arrival and dismissal today. So I just want to introduce myself again. I'm Pat Higgins. I'm the Western Massachusetts Outreach Coordinator. And yeah, I guess we'll go from there. So we can advance to the next slide, please. A good place to start with is asking the question, how did we get here? Why are many of our arrival dismissals so chaotic? The answer is a witch's brew featuring a variety of spooky ingredients, including ones on this screen. Get ready, everybody. We have a lot of puns on Halloween in this. For those of you who have already attended Emily and Judy's sessions, this slide might be a review for you. If this is your first session of the day, we just want to set the stage for why we are having these arrival and dismissal issues. For most of the past 60 years, many communities planned and designed schools around cars, and when cars are prioritized, biking and walking isn't. Over time, this created a self-fulfilling cycle that leads to many auto-dependent communities and leads to situations like the following traffic jams at some of our partner schools. This is one example of where we are today. If anyone on this Zoom call has a similar situation, please raise your digital hand to relate. With history in mind, we recognize it isn't feasible for schools to mitigate all 20th century planning mistakes, but there are some small steps communities can take to begin moving towards a safe, healthier future, and it starts with an arrival dismissal assessment. Arrival dismissal assessments are SRTS-led observations where members of the community observe an arrival and dismissal and then discuss ways to improve it. In many ways, it is a chance to specifically document what arrival and dismissal is like at your school and then identify the solutions for your school's unique needs. Some schools get confused on the difference between this and a walk audit. An arrival dismissal focuses on behavior, whereas a walk audit focuses more on the physical built environment. Coupled together, these positions your school well for a variety of bike and pedestrian improvements. Arrival and dismissal observations are helpful for all types of schools, whether urban, rural, or something in between. For example, Clarksburg Elementary is a local rural school in the Berkshires. While they became a partner school in 2012, they had us do an arrival dismissal report this past year. To give people a visual, Clarksburg is the orange community on this map. As you might be able to tell, Clarksburg is relatively removed from major roads. While Clarksburg has been a partner for several years, their SRTS engagement really took off when they expressed interest in improving on-site traffic. This came up during an annual plan meeting. The school had an issue where the on-site parking couldn't accommodate the school-generated traffic and library patrons. While not a conflict in the morning, the different parties had issues during the dismissal portions, mainly involving parents and guardians who showed up early to wait in the parking lot for students to be dismissed. They were not initially aware that we could help them, but we immediately discussed the idea of an arrival dismissal observation that, at a minimum, could document their existing dilemma. There had been several discussions on relocating the library to a new site, but portions of the community resisted the idea of relocating the library. This might be something that you can relate to. Raise your digital hand if you had a community traffic issue, but also had the same members of the community oppose your solution to the issue. That noted, we approached the scenario with a positive mental attitude. The optimistic side of us realized that the community all agreed that a solution was needed, and that meant we could potentially help finding something that works for most people. This is an example of Clarksburg's initial circulation pattern. Coupled with parents waiting in line for school to end, marked in red, would block in patrons at the library. There were 2 lanes of parked cars, and they would alternate pulling forward to meet their student. The outer lane was the issue, though the parking lot couldn't handle all cars queued up in one lane. Sometimes the traffic would spill into West Cross Road, which is an issue because it is one of the few main roads in the community. As I stated a few slides ago, there's not much of a walking and biking population because of this situation. Buses, marked in yellow, would drive in the back of the parking lot. This was encouraging, as separation of modes is one of our safe routes principles. The only time modes interacted was when all vehicles would exit the parking lot, marked in orange. Because when red and yellow mix, we get orange, just like a pumpkin. For the remainder of this presentation, Clarksburg will be an example for how our arrival dismissal process works. Before going further into our example, let's first step back and review what exactly is in arrival dismissal report. The report is a PowerPoint presentation that reviews the following elements. We first establish the context of the observation, including school hours and geography. Then we review observations. We then discuss some potential options for improving safety, which are organized under our 6 E's principle. Lastly, we provide a list of resources for different funding opportunities. Let's pretend that you've contacted your outreach coordinator and expressed interest in doing an arrival dismissal analysis. The next question is, who should participate? The simple answer is that every community has different stakeholders, but generally we encourage inviting representatives from these groups on your screen. There are a few important items to note about this list. At a minimum, it is important to include people who do arrival and dismissal every day. This is particularly valuable as solutions need to be informed by the people they immediately impact. In the event people are not free to observe, your OC or outreach coordinator is happy to talk with them on the phone about their experience and opinions. We've done solo missions before, and in some cases, it happens over multiple days. On an advanced level, if DPW or other offices are involved, it makes implementing solutions such as painting lines or clearing snow easier because these departments are involved early in the process. This is especially valuable as it further builds a relationship that you can leverage when you do a walk assessment. Now that we know what's in a report, let's quickly review the process for planning and delivering the report. Conducting a report is fairly straightforward, and it goes as follows. First, we make a strategy for observing and finishing a report. The strategy elements include a review of the existing procedures and a plan for how to actually observe. Don't have a formalized procedure? No worries. You'll have one following the completion of the report. We also look at a list of list potential observation participants. We pick an actual date of the observation date, including a backup snow and rain date, and we include a general time for completing the report. Then we conduct a parent survey and/or student address map. This generates data that will inform any proposed solution. Following the maps, we conduct our observation. Safe Routes then drafts a report with the elements from our previous slide. We then have a follow-up meeting with your school to review the SRTS report. Sometimes there are additional steps following the review meeting. It depends on your school's individual needs. Many of you might wonder how this works during COVID, and the simple answer is that your outreach coordinator has a variety of socially distant strategies that can be modified to fit your district's policy. So how did Clarksburg handle their arrival and dismissal observation? The answer included a variety of steps. The school had a great relationship with Mass in Motion and included them in the observation team. This provided an extra level of local knowledge that was reflected in the Trails solution, but we'll talk more about that later. Additionally, Clarksburg created a student address map and scheduled a snow day, because of New England after all. We also discussed what to do after the report, including how we would communicate our results to other members of the community. One of the best parts of Clarksburg process was that it included presenting the results to the school committee. This involved adding Safe Routes to the agenda for their monthly meeting. All right, so it's observation day. First of all, be safe. Observation day should start with a team meeting at the school before arrival begins. This gives people a chance to ask questions and to review what to observe. This also includes identifying roles for different members of the observation team. For example, if counting cars is a task, this should be one person's sole responsibility. In advance, confirm if there are any accommodations needed for observers, including language barriers. Note, in the event that COVID is still around, this can happen the day before on a Zoom call. The Zoom call is also a great way to receive feedback from families who cannot volunteer to participate on the observation day. In the event families can't make the Zoom call, asking them to email comments before a given deadline is also another alternative. Related to establishing roles is a conversation about what do we observe. Each school is different, but common observations are separate modes of transit on school property, crossing guard and staff behaviors, student and parent/guardian behaviors, elements of the built environment, areas of conflict and overall conditions, and addressing students of all abilities. Here are some general tools that can help people record the observations we just spoke about. Some people like to use blank sheets of paper, and others like to have more structure. If you want structure, we have a data gathering sheet which is available upon request. One safety note, depending on your observation location, clothing makes a difference. If someone is observing traffic, be safe, be seen applies. If you are observing from a safe location, casual clothing is encouraged as it is likely to impact behavior. Wonder why we recommend pencils over pens? Turns out pens get shy in 20-degree weather. Trust us, it happens. So what did we see in Clarksburg? The answer is a variety of behaviors and actions that both encouraged and discouraged safety. We'll spend the next few minutes reserving these observations in greater detail. One thing we want to emphasize is that these observations were expected and allowed safe routes to codify the behavior. The purpose of this report is not to name and shame school staff. Rather, the purpose is to provide school staff a tool that allows them to demonstrate to leadership that an unbiased third party found some ways to improve arrival and dismissal. We typically classify our observations by time of day, like arrival and dismissal, and mode of transportation. Starting with buses, we observed a separation of modes, which is great. We also observed idling while waiting to dismiss students, which is not great. Many personal vehicles dropped off students. Common behaviors included idling, a no-no, and exiting on the passenger side, which we do encourage. The logic behind the passenger door exit is that it reduces how often a student might interact with traffic. In some situations, we will try to use images and diagrams to depict what we observed. This is an example of where we documented how car queues blocked library spaces. A common theme was also observed was that some cars parked in locations that were marked as no parking. This was an issue in Clarksburg because the no parking spaces obstructed one's view of oncoming traffic. In terms of pedestrian observations, we noticed that there was not enough signage to explain how pedestrians can safely walk to school or when they're on the school property. This is a common occurrence at many of our schools, and fortunately, as we'll discuss later, it is an easy fix. In terms of dismissal, bus behaviors were similar to the morning. There was good separation from other modes, but there was also a lot of idling. We also noted that one bus service didn't properly use its lights. While no one was hurt during the observation, this is an example of where a report can quickly lead to a friendly reminder to drivers about how to keep students safe. In terms of personal vehicles, there were similar observations to the morning. One thing that stood out to us was that while there were two lines, there did not seem to be a clear system for having cars proceed forward. We also observed an individual on their phone. How many people in the audience can relate to this? Raise your hand. Additionally, you'll notice that on the last line, that snow created parking capacity issues. This is something that many of you can relate to, especially since we might have snow within the month. As the library conflict was the reason for this observation, we made sure to document how it impacted the school in terms of safety. What became clear following the observation was that the current parking lot supply could not handle the volume of cars. We also made sure to document the library conundrum from a variety of angles. In terms of pedestrian observations, there were similar observations as the morning. We did find one correctable element of the built environment. At the school exit, there was a blind spot for traffic taking a turn. At one point, a mirror was installed, though it has since fallen out of alignment. This is an example from the hill with the mirror. Such a solution would be a quick fix. As you can see, the mirror was installed, but the angle existed in a way that didn't allow drivers to see around the hill. Having reviewed Clarksburg's observations, let's zoom back out to the general topic of what happens after an observation takes place. Your outreach coordinator will create a school-specific report that details observation data as well as provides solutions that could help improve your arrival and dismissal procedure. Solutions may include easy-to-implement things like adding temporary signage or more expensive and advanced solutions like changing physical infrastructure. Here are some solutions we provided to Clarksburg. The one that we were the most excited about was the Bike to School Friday and Park and Walk solution, which we'll show you in a few minutes. You might wonder about that ticketing solution. We wanted to increase awareness and understanding of the no idling law. We felt that parents would listen to their students as it was more of a learning moment. An important item to note is that while we will recommend several solutions, your school doesn't have to use all of them. Following our review meeting, Clarksburg decided to try these options. The logic behind the decision was varied. In the case of the bike to school event, one of the observation team members was also a parent and a cyclist. He offered to lead a bike to school event on Fridays. As far as modifying the handbook went, this was more of a formality that just codified the ability for biking and walking. The same could be said for the park and walk. In order for these solutions to stick, they needed to be codified. Much like the rest of the Commonwealth, we had to modify our plans for implementation due to COVID-19. That noted, there is still interest in finishing the work and once the pandemic subsides. Park and walks are a method where students are dropped off at a location near school and walk a short distance to the building. The idea behind this is that it broadens the congestion radius by reducing the amount of cars traveling to the school. In the case of Clarksburg, students were going to be dropped off at a nearby park and would walk through a well-groomed trail to the school. We've seen some other schools use this as a way to encourage social distancing by reducing the number of queuing cars on campus. Additionally, it gives students a chance to have some exercise during the school day and also the perk of extra independence. In summation, for parents, it was a park and walk, but for students, it was a perk and walk.
I had to take myself off of mute to chuckle at that one.
It's my hope that someone in this meeting listened to Clarksburg's park and walk solution and thought it could apply to their school too. We understand that there might be a significant shift to the family vehicle this year during COVID. So by allowing students to walk at least part of the way to school, not only promotes active transportation, but also helps to broaden the congestion radius around the schools. The decrease in vehicle traffic near school campus will reduce idling emissions and ultimately improve air quality. This might seem particularly valuable as you continue to find ways to encourage social distancing while also trying to help students stay physically active during the school day. If you are that person, we have some additional resources for you, such as our new Park and Walk Guide. This document goes into more detail about how the solution can improve your school's arrival and dismissal process and what steps you need to take to institute one. We feel this document is a great resource to share with people who are skeptical but open to new solutions. If you would like to read through this document in more detail, it is available on our website at the bottom of the encouragement page under additional helpful links. Like what you see? Reach out to your outreach coordinator to discuss more. We would be happy to help you figure out what next steps your community needs to get to this point. Although there are school-specific recommendations in our reports, there are common recommendations that we provide to help supplement our 6 E's framework. You'll notice that this is nearly the exact same slide as Judy's from the walk audit. You don't need to read through them now, but 5 I wanted to draw attention to include offering pedestrian and bike safety training to boost your education participation, utilizing our SRTS crossing guard training guide and video resources for the engagement E, enhance your evaluation participation by requesting a walkshed map based on a spreadsheet of anonymous student addresses and zip codes. We won't know what modes students use to get to school, but at least every student is accounted for, and we can identify the best walking and biking routes based on clusters of students within walking and biking distance to school. 4, we also recommend visiting our equity page to learn more about including students of all abilities in your SRTS events. Lastly, to encourage more creative walking, we have Walk Across America and Walk Across Massachusetts maps available to track your walking progress. Digital copies of these maps can also be found under the encouragement page of our website. One recommendation that is also consistent across many schools is distributing our driver awareness document to families. This helps reiterate safe driving practices during arrival and dismissal. The first page that you see here gives quick tips on what to be on the lookout for during arrival and dismissal. Examples include scanning the street for wheels and feet, putting your vehicle in park before your student exits the vehicle, and reducing idling. The second page goes into more detail about the different Massachusetts emissions from idling. It also discusses state laws that are relevant during arrival and dismissal, such as our no idling, the hands-free law, and school bus laws. We encourage you to get familiar with these laws because they are extremely important to ensure student safety during arrival and dismissal. The documentation is available in 10 different languages and can be found on our website under the Education page. Speaking of student safety during arrival dismissal, another document we are excited to share is our newly developed Start the School Day with Confidence document. Like the driver awareness document, the first page of the guide gives quick tips on how to ensure a safe arrival and dismissal for students, such as following crossing guard instructions, ride on the right side of the road if you are on a bike or scooter, and being aware of school zone speed limits. The second page goes into more detail about sidewalk safety, bike safety, and family vehicle safety. This document is available in 9 different languages and can be found on our website under the Education page directly under the driver awareness document.
Pat, I'm having Leon put those into the links in the chat to all the documents you just reviewed. So everyone can go straight to the link and be able to download those documents.
Excellent. Thanks for doing that, Diane. And if for some reason anybody you lose the link to this, reach out to your outreach coordinator and they're happy to point you in the right direction after the summit. In addition to our internal resources, we'll also provide you with a variety of external resources, including direct links to the Massachusetts laws that we mentioned before, information on organizations that can help with signage, and in some case, grant opportunities outside of Safe Routes. And I will now turn it over to Rachel to discuss some tips on how to create and address your arrival dismissal procedures.
All right, thanks, Pat. So now that we've reviewed the entire arrival dismissal process from start to finish, we want to spend the remainder of our session on what to include in your arrival and dismissal plans if you don't have one created yet. We want to discuss ways to adjust your language if you have an existing procedure, and also how to effectively communicate those procedures to all appropriate parties. Having written arrival and dismissal procedures that can be easily accessed not only helps to communicate expectations to families, but bus drivers, crossing guards, and staff members. It also holds all parties accountable, so their reasoning can't just be, well, I didn't know. Procedures provide consistency when it comes to traffic safety. A complete arrival dismissal plan includes school hours, a circulation map that illustrates all modes, and the accompanying text describing the procedures for each mode. These components are all important when publishing your plan. We recommend placing those documents under the About Us or General Info tab that many school websites have. Also, there are some key phrases we need to use. Drop off and pickup are very car-centric terms. We want to use language like arrival and dismissal, especially in the title, because these terms are more inclusive to all modes of transportation, including walkers and bikers. We can save the drop-off and pickup terms for the family vehicle section of the procedures. We also recommend organizing your plan so at the top of the list are walker and biker procedures, followed by the bus rider procedures, and lastly, the car rider procedures. This gives priority to the active transportation modes, but we will get into that in a couple minutes. We understand that procedures will differ school by school due to location and campus size, infrastructure, demographics, etc. But the overall template of the procedure should remain the same throughout a district to tie back in with that consistency factor. If a student is moving through the school district, for example, moving from elementary to middle school, it will be easier for the family to find the arrival dismissal procedures if they are all located in the same area on each web page. This creates transparency and helps to eliminate any confusion. We also want these procedures to be equitable, so if it's possible, we recommend publishing the procedures in multiple languages. The example you see here is of an ideal street where all modes of transportation are not only considered, they are separated. And I want you to take a real good look at every single mode we have on here. Just like cars, bikes, buses, bikes, pedestrian, and the occasional magic carpet all have their place on a municipal street, modes of transportation on school property should also try to be separated to ensure safe arrival and dismissal. If we remove conflicts between modes, we improve safety. Many of you already do this with buses, and the next step is to do this with the cars and the pedestrian and the bikes. The use of cones, sandwich boards, chains, etc. can help keep modes of transportation separate on school grounds, but they can also help effectively communicate the procedures. For example, if there's a sandwich board that says, please pull up, drivers are more likely to pull up. If another sandwich board says buses only, drivers are less likely to go through that lane. These temporary structures aren't foolproof by any means, but they do help. Cones, chains, and other materials can also be used to block lanes and prevent premature queuing without the need for someone to constantly be out there in traffic enforcing it. Additional pedestrian signage, like the one you see here, can also help reinforce the concept of yielding to pedestrians in a crosswalk. If flashing signs cannot be installed, this sign can give a bit more of a visual cue to drivers to let them know that someone might be crossing the street at some point. Speaking of people in traffic, if you plan on having staff members assist with the arrival dismissal process, and there's a chance that they will be walking in between cars or standing in the middle of the school driveway, we can't emphasize this enough. Be safe, be seen. A simple vest goes a long way, especially when the sun rises late and sets early during those long winter months. It's also another visual cue for drivers to be more aware of their surroundings. If there are any crossing guards near the school, please make sure that they have the proper gear to effectively cross students, such as a reflective vest or jacket and a handheld stop paddle. Check out our crossing guard materials if you want to learn more. If you want to encourage more walking and biking to school, the best way to do it is to give those students the grand entrance, meaning the front door. This makes their trip shorter and more convenient, but it also subconsciously shows that the school encourages and values this type of transportation over single-family vehicles. We want to put cars at the bottom of the priority list since they contribute the most to school traffic and congestion. This also ties back to the order of the procedures. We want to put walkers and bikers first because they are the most vulnerable, but also the most sustainable form of transportation. This also goes along with the separation of modes. If we put walkers, bikers, and buses at the front and family vehicles in the back or on the side of the school, we are not only giving priority to the preferred modes, but we also are keeping them separated. Another factor to consider is the staggering of dismissal times to help alleviate congestion. Many morning procedures have that rolling time window, roughly 15 or 20 minutes, where families can drop off their students. This tends not to happen in the afternoon because everyone wants to be first, so they all show up at the same time. We recommend that walkers and bikers get dismissed first so they can get safely on their way before many vehicles start entering and exiting the campus. This also helps during COVID because you are releasing students in waves. When the walkers and bikers are leaving, the students who take the bus can be loaded up, and once they leave, the car riders can load, aka our priority list. By ordering who is released at the end of the day, you reduce conflicts between modes. The image that you see here on the right is a school in Holliston that dismisses their walkers and bikers before any other modes leaves the school grounds. Families will meet in the grass on the side of the school, and a staff member will escort the students to them. They are able to get a solid head start before any cars leave the campus. In general, there are some mode-specific solutions to consider. These are common ways to improve the pedestrian and bike experience, which will ultimately help encourage more active transportation to and from school. Just like buses and cars know which entrance and exit routes to use, pedestrians also need a clear path of travel. They should be encouraged to cross at marked crosswalks to maintain predictability and reduce any safety concerns. If the modes are separated, this will also hopefully minimize any crossing between them. If you want to encourage biking to school, a bike rack can help students because they will feel better about leaving their bikes outside. A bike rack does nobody good if it's inaccessible or unusable. We tend to see the fullest bike racks when they are close to the front entrance of a school and they are easy to get your bike in and out of, something that Judy referenced earlier. It's an added bonus if they are covered and secured. We do want to remind folks that the law is that anyone under the age of 16 needs to wear a helmet when riding or rolling, like a scooter or a skateboard. So the question about where to store helmets will likely come up. There's no single right answer regarding helmet storage, but we do want you to think about what would work best for your school. There are also some bus solutions to consider. In some cases, it might be helpful to remind bus drivers about the rules and previously mentioned bus safety laws. It is also helpful to remind parents and guardians about bus rules so they can better understand the expectations if they are ever interacting with them. We typically discourage double rows of buses because that means students have to walk in between them. Since the door is on the right side of the bus, we recommend having a circulation plan that allows buses to let out directly onto the sidewalk. When the buses are letting out, they should have their lights on and flashing and their stop paddle out, just like the one you see in this photo. Lastly, here are some vehicle solutions. Many of these safety tips are in the previously mentioned SRTS driver safety document and the student safety during arrival and dismissal document. But we do want to reiterate the importance of students not walking in the road or crossing in between cars to get to the sidewalk and then the school door. To prevent a backup, we recommend that parents and guardians stay in the car and the students secure their own seatbelts. But it is also important to make walking fun. Walking school buses and bike trains build a sense of community, and they are great ways to add more physical activity into the day. As many schools are reevaluating transportation budgets and looking for transportation alternatives during COVID, walking school buses can, in some contexts, be a great option now and can be sustained long after COVID. If you don't know how to take the first steps in launching a walking school bus or bike train, we recommend taking a look at our walking school bus and bike train guide. It can be found under the encouragement page of our website. This 12-page guide covers everything you need to know about walking school buses and bike trains, from the process of how to select each route all the way to the suggested ground rules for once they get launched. It also provides additional resources about funding for walking school bus leaders and examples of walking school buses across the Commonwealth. Once you're ready to launch a walking school bus or bike train, we have walking school bus kits available. These include 4 reflective Safe Routes vests, a couple cans of spray chalk, and an image of a walking school bus that can be used as a stencil. By using the spray chalk and stencil along the selected walking school bus route, you're guiding the students with a visual image, and they're less likely to wander off. This is essentially how an arrival and dismissal process works. To sum it up, we are here to help you. We understand that there's a lot going on in the world right now, and your arrival dismissal process is another thing on your plate, and we can hopefully try and remove that from your plate. The goal of a report is not only to document ways to improve safety, but it's a way to encourage safe and sustainable student travel to and from school. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, and this is not a one-size-fits-all program. Every school has different needs, and we will make sure the report addresses those specific pain points. Regardless of the various challenges a school faces, it's important for the schools to have an arrival dismissal plan. But ultimately, everything we do boils down to the students. We want to help students be safe and healthy on their way to and from school. Thank you so much for listening, and we will take any questions now. I will say if we could have all OCs sort of on call in case we need to kind of solve some arrival dismissal pain points on the spot, we are ready to hear them.
Thank you so much, Rachel and Pat. I'm going to bring the chat window up and see what's been going on over the last bit. We do have about 15 minutes available for chats or for questions. Let's see here. Okay.
I did so early on, I think.
Yes. Does it make sense to try and do an arrival dismissal audit at a time when many schools are operating in hybrid or remote models and arrival dismissal isn't operating under normal conditions within the same amount of school traffic? I will briefly make a comment about that, and then I think I know our OCs have other comments about it too. This is actually a great time to look at what your infrastructure is around the school and maybe just take that time to redesign how your arrival dismissal is going to look. It's really important to take a time when there's change and implement that change, because you won't get maybe an opportunity like this again. So I'm going to open it up to the OCs to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. I think right now we've seen a big shift from bus riders to car riders. So it's almost like there is the same amount of cars on campus if it's in a hybrid situation. If there's only half the students in the school at one time, but you have double the amount of cars, it sort of evens back out to the amount of cars that you would have seen before COVID. So I think evaluating that is a great idea for right now. And then, like I said, it can sort of perpetuate into different years and kind of restructure how you plan your arrival and dismissal process.
Thanks, Rachel. Who else would like to? Judy, thanks.
I'll jump in. So Dan, I'm actually doing one of the Arlington schools next week. I will contact you on the side to let you know what's going on there. different ways we can go about this. So it's always nice to have a chat with the individual principals, and they can kind of, you know, lay out to you what their current plan is for arrival dismissal, if they have a plan, and what's on their wish list. What if in a perfect world, could they change? So again, as Rachel and Pat went through in their presentation, we look at separating the modes of transportation. We look how you use your front door. How are you using any side streets around the school? What's the inherent behavior? Are people making U-turns? Are they dropping off on the wrong side of the street? You can still talk to the crossing guards. I mean, they're really the boots on the ground folks who know what's going on. And again, what kind of signage do you have on school property, and what is it saying? Is it saying exactly what you want it to say? And lastly, staff parking. Do you have problems with your parents encroaching on staff parking if you have an interior lot? Or where are they parking in the neighborhood if that is their option? There's ways to use traffic calming for where the staff actually park. So agreeing with my colleagues, there's still lots we can do now to move that ball forward.
I think there's one other thing I'd like to add too, and I think it's a good question. Like when we look at this from a scientific perspective, it's true that arrival and dismissal has changed for many communities during the time of COVID, but what hasn't changed is that students are still coming and going from school. So I think in some ways, just because we do an arrival dismissal under COVID conditions doesn't mean that 2-3 years from now we do an arrival dismissal under regular conditions. And so the way I've looked at it with some of my communities is, even if this is just something that's going to get us through the next year or so, anything that encourages student safety is something I want to do with my school partners. And so I think there's still an opportunity to just find ways to make things safe right now. And then we can always revisit how we can make things safe in a more, we'll call it a normal circumstance.
I want to go ahead and jump in and take it even back just a step. For those of you that might be on here that are saying, arrival and dismissal plan? We don't have that, right? Because these guys are talking about those that are already having it. So this is the time to look at that. Somebody in the school, most likely the principal, already knows that, but that might be in the person's head. We need to make sure that it's documented, and however it is documented, that it's placed on the website. You may send it out to the parents at the beginning of the school year, or when it is that they're going to start coming back into the building, but also make it really visible. All of us have been looking for something. If it's a Zoom meeting and we're looking for the link, we're like, where is it? Where is it? If it's easily accessible on the website and you can pull it up at that last moment, that would be really, really helpful. So follow our guidelines, talk to us about what are those suggestions on what it is that you should be looking at. But if you don't have it, don't panic yet. Reach out to us and we can help you with that.
Thanks, Vivian. And I think I'm going to turn this next one over to you too, because you manage the Boston Public Schools region. And the question is, how do you incorporate public transit options into these plans? And, you know, with middle schools is when we're going to see this a little bit more incorporated, and they would be treated just as every other mode. They're going to be walkers or scooters, you know, coming into the campus. So we're going to treat them in a similar fashion. But Vivian, do you have any guidance?
As a person that used multimodal traffic choices today, I came in on the commuter rail. I'm a huge fan of using the apps, because the apps let me know if I'm leaving my house, what time I need to be out there to make that connection with the bus, and then what time it's going to get me to my end destination. So I'm not exactly sure if that's what the person is asking when it has to do with timing, or like where the bus stop that in Boston, the MBTA uses is still going to be the bus stop. All right, that's not going to change, but just being able to time it and knowing, you know, where it is that you need to be at a particular time. Maybe the person that's asking, or whomever's on the Zoom right now, might be wondering, well, I don't really know what time, I don't really know how it works. So looking into those transit apps and figuring it out. And the other great thing is to practice it. Do it on a day or a weekday, which is normal. I wouldn't do it on a weekend if it's something that you're going to be doing on the during the week. Practice it a couple of days beforehand so you kind of get that down. So there are ways to do it, but I really suggest using the transit app to kind of give you an idea of how to do it.
I like that you said practice too, because that's one of the things we encourage. If you are going to go into an active transportation mode, whether you're walking or biking, practice that path. Make sure that you understand what the infrastructure looks like. Are you going to be crossing a street? Can you go down a side street? So practicing before you do it is always a great. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay, Josh,
I
actually,
think Judy
it's
wants
Phil.
to finish.
Oh, Judy, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thought I'd just jump in. There's many different ways that public local transit can be incorporated into a public school student's day. They're just another commuter. There's a couple things though that we do like to impress. School buses operate differently than a municipal bus, and that's something we had to educate the students on. A municipal bus will not stop traffic. A school bus will. A municipal bus will not allow a student to cross the street in front of it once it picks up or drops off. A school bus will. So there's different, and even the direction of how you sit on a municipal bus versus a school bus. Everything's quite different. So that's one educational piece. But again, it's all about communication and partnership. So whether you're in Lawrence, you're in Gloucester, you're in Lexington, it's how you want to use your municipal bus. If you're in Gloucester at the middle school there, the public school bus comes right behind the traditional regular yellow buses. That's just the way they do it. In a place like Lawrence, there are a number of students who know the routes. Same as in Boston, same as in Brookline. That's their mass transit to get to school, not the regular school bus. You have a community like Lexington, there's actually a partnership where the municipal bus will actually help the students act as a late bus and get home to school after school, following after school activities. So there's different ways that this can be approached. But again, it's all a partnership, and the safe routes, again, it's all about collaboration.
Thanks, Judy. And then I was reminded too, Emily brought this up at one of our another forums, that Fitchburg actually for their high school students has a specific bus route that stops at the high school during the time of dismissal. So if you have a good collaboration between all the stakeholders, you're able to use public transit as a means of getting students to and from school. So Phil says Concord Town schools have liability concerns regarding recruiting volunteers to assist with arrival dismissal. What are the rules, issues, a way to address those liability issues? So Judy has information about liability. Judy actually has a long history with the city of Lexington on as the Safe Routes to School running the program for many years and got a lot of these questions. So Judy, if you can talk about liability.
Okay, yeah, 20,000 feet. I won't get down into the weeds about this one. Liability is partly perception, but it's partly whatever rules you have set up and how those rules are followed. All municipalities have liability insurance. All schools have liability insurance. All PTOs, that's part of their membership in their organization, have liability insurance. So when it gets down to who you want helping with arrival dismissal, whether it be staff and or volunteers, that's really up to the individual school and the individual school's comfort level. What type of relationship you have with your parent volunteers. One caveat is that some schools prefer just to do it in-house, and it's a staff assignment, if you would, because the staff is usually there longer than the parents, because the parents are typically there only for as long as their child might be. So that's a high-level way of looking at it.
And it looks like Paul has replied in here too, of what is happening in Sturbridge. PTO created a group of parent helpers who are all quarried, which is super important. And we give them our needs, they fill the spots, and that's how the volunteerism works. He said, I think the same issues would apply when you have those parent volunteers help with students on field trips, loading and unloading buses, and walking. Thanks, Paul. Great info. Coming up to the top here, you can sometimes recommend public transit as an option for students who wouldn't think of themselves as a walker. Absolutely. I think that we all want to encourage that. So it just depends on what's going on again in that community. If they're not within busing radius for a school bus, but maybe they still have an opportunity to take public transit, we absolutely would work with the school to make sure that we can get them on a bus. I have another question here. How do parents feel about kids riding a bus with general public on municipal bus system? you know, I don't know if it's a loaded question, but I am going to say that, you know, the comfort level of kids on public transit, it's really dependent on the comfort level of parents or guardians on public transit. So if you expose your children at a young age, and this is the way that people in most of the world are getting around, and that this is not a big deal, then the kids are going to feel the same way. So we talk about promoting active transportation, and that includes public transportation, because you are actively getting yourself to a train or a bus, or, you know, however you're getting yourself there. So it's the parents have to feel good about it, and the parents have to feel comfortable, so that their kids can as well. So, you know, ride the bus with your kids, ride the train with your kids, and then it sort of takes this mystique or whatever somebody's feeling about it. So I don't know if anyone else has a comment about that. We're all public transit riders in our group, and we love it. And you know, we do it with or without COVID and feel you know, comfortable, but it's obviously on everyone's comfort level. Judy, go ahead.
A good family exercise, if you want, for a preschooler or K through 2 student, perhaps, is to take a mystery ride on your local bus. And that's a good way to introduce with the entire family of all ages what your local bus is. And so they understand from, as you mentioned, Diane, from a young age about how this works. Many of the public school students in Massachusetts who use public transit are typically middle school through high school age. And again, as mentioned, it's more comfort level for the parents. Just as many schools have different ages where they prefer students not walk to school by themselves or bike to school. So it's not something that we can dictate as a Safe Routes to School program, but it's more individual school to school procedures, if you would, because everyone has a different backyard with different geographic challenges.